From day in, day out, man, the time I was 11, 12 years old, getting up on my own, going to school. When somebody else get that credit, yeah, it pisses you off. It pissed me off.
You know, he's 29 years old and they're wanting him to talk about when he was 16. You know, he's been through a Super Bowl. He thinks that's probably more interesting than...
It's not true. Okay, see, because if I had to put a bed in my kitchen, my children had somewhere to sleep. See, I've been portrayed as the worst mother in the world, and that one is.
In 2006, Author Michael Lewis dropped a non-fiction sports novel. The novel was called Blindside: The Evolution of the Game. Now, the book, for the most part, follows two storylines. Storyline 1 talks about how over the years, the left tackle became one of the most important and highest paid positions on the field, largely due to a man who, despite his initials, didn't even play the damn position. That man was Lawrence Taylor, the man all the left tackles got paid to fill the block. The other storyline was about a young up-and-coming left tackle who was now going to benefit from his position's newfound importance. But the best part of that story was what that left tackle had gone through up to that point in his life. Michael Oher grew up with double-digit siblings. Most of the kids had different dads but shared the same mom, but the mom was in a constant battle with an extremely addictive substance. So the kids was in a constant battle with child services trying to stay together. Michael was eventually taken in by the Tuohy family, a family who was able to provide some much needed stability for a young Michael. Dude goes on to get drafted into the NFL. First round. And now the book that was partially based on his life is turned into a movie that's pretty much all about his life. The Blindside movie was a massive success, bringing in over $300 million for the movie studio. But the man portrayed in the successful film wasn't exactly the biggest fan of the movie. I felt like it portrayed me as dumb, instead of as a kid who never had consistent academic instruction and ended up thriving once he got it. Quentin Aaron did a great job acting the part, but I couldn't figure out why the director chose to show me as someone who had to be taught the game of football. Whether it was SJ moving around ketchup bottles or Leanne explaining to me what blocking is all about. I watched those scenes thinking, no, that's not me at all.
Here is your tailback.
Matter of fact, I've definitely used this Orson Welles quote before, but dude said if you want a happy ending, that all depends on where you stop the story. But one thing I've learned about covering real people, for them and their loved ones, the story doesn't stop when the credits roll. The story goes on and it morphs and it changes and it gets more and more complicated. It might not fit in the same little box that it used to. So when the movie ends and everybody go back home, he still got to deal with that trauma from when he was little. He still got to figure out how to play in the NFL and fight every day to stick around. Let's just say he does stick around. Let's say he makes a career out of this thing. He still has to deal with the aftermath. So while most of us probably left the movie theater with a great feeling coming off of this feel-good story, Mike left with a bad concussion that took him years to bounce back from. Is this really the feel-good story it was said to be? Is one of the villains really a victim of an unjust system? Why Michael Oher not the hero of his own story? How does he feel about that?
When somebody else get that credit, yeah, it pisses you off. It pissed me off.
Not only Mike himself can accurately tell his full story, and he has told some of it in his New York Times best-selling book, a biography called I Beat the Odds: From Homelessness to the Blind Side and Beyond. But today I'm gonna go through and use interviews, quotes, and article write-ups from across the internet to put together a version of Mike's story, all while trying to get a better understanding of why the man has grown to hate his own movie so damn much. Other than that, y'all know what time it is, fellas. Cue the Wayne. Alright, real quick before we jump in, today's video is sponsored by Factor. Factor makes meeting your nutrition goals easy by delivering fresh, never frozen, dietitian approved meals right to your crib. The team of gourmet chefs create every meal using only top quality ingredients, which in turn helps you to feel your best all day long. In a market full of unrealistic and unsustainable diet plans, Factor takes a welcome new approach to prepared food. In this busy fall season, you can rely on Factor for fast, never frozen meals that both taste great and fit your lifestyle. For me, a lot of days I'm locked in this office from 8 to 8, researching, writing, and editing video. On those days, I only have time to step out of the office for a few minutes at a time. And when I do, Factor has become a go-to for some quick nutrition. I pull one out the fridge and I'm eating just a few minutes later. It's a hell of a lot faster than all the meal delivery services, and it definitely saves me some bread on a week-to-week basis. So head to go.factor75.com/FlemLo60. Use code FlemLo60 for 60% off of your first Factor box. Again, that's go.factor75.com/FlemLo60, and make sure you use the code FlemLo60 for 60% off your first Factor box. Man, shout out to Factor once again for sponsoring the video. They've been holding it down for a while now. But without further ado, let's jump back in. Michael Oher was born in Memphis, Tennessee in the mid-80s. And like many others during that time, Michael's mom fell victim to the crack epidemic. She managed to give birth to 12 kids, but due to her addiction, most of the time, her kids would have to basically fend for themselves. Now, Miss Denise Oher wasn't happy with her portrayal in the movie either, although it was pretty consistent with the story that Michael has told. He said his earliest memories are from when he was 2 or 3 years old. He said his mom had disappeared once again and locked the kids out of the apartment. Michael said this happened pretty often, and she'd sometimes be gone for hours or even days. So Mike and his siblings, even at that young age, would then have to go hunt for a place to sleep. If things went well, they found a friend's couch or a floor they could crash on. But on bad nights, they could end up sleeping under a bridge. Miss Denise was described in one article as a loving mother when she was sober. But according to Michael, that was rarely the case. The crack cocaine epidemic ruined a lot of lives back then. We know all about it now, but back then, early adopters didn't understand how dangerous and hyper addictive it was. And it just spread like wildfire through poverty-stricken neighborhoods in the 80s, right around the time Mike would have been growing up. Now, assuming we following the same principles from the more recent opioid epidemic, Miss Denise should be seen as a victim. She was a single mother with 12 kids to different dads, none of whom were around, and she couldn't go to a bar after work to unwind. So maybe looking for an escape, or maybe one of her men gave it to her. She ended up getting addicted to some bullshit that ruined her life. So I'm not gonna treat her like a villain in this story. I think she's more of a victim than anything. That said, we will be following Michael's version of the story from his book and other interviews, so this video will focus largely on how he experienced it as a kid. All in all, she had 12 kids, and they lived in constant fear of being taken by child services and separated from each other. As a kid, Michael and his siblings saw social workers as bounty hunters. And you can imagine being in a kid position, this person is coming in and threatening to take you away from the only family you know. They even planned escape routes just in case the social worker showed up and their mom wasn't there or she was in a bad state. They could get out of Dodge without getting captured. But on this one particular day, Miss Denise left Mike and his siblings for 2 whole days. She would normally take the smaller kids with her, but on this particular day, she left them behind. So all the kids are at the house. It's a school day, they didn't go. So they're sitting at home starving because ain't no food in the house. Then the worst case scenario, in their eyes at least, comes to fruition. Bounty hunter shows up and Michael remembers his brother's escape plan. So boom, he make a mad dash out the back door. He's gone. But eventually he notices something. Couldn't tell exactly how old he was in this story, but it seems like he was somewhere between 6 and 9 years old. So he's running, he gets away, and he's able to hide in some type of store like across the street or next to their house. When he gets there, he looks back and finally it clicks in his head. Nobody had grabbed his little sisters, ages 2 and 1. Michael turns back, but it's too late. He sees the social workers coming out of the house with both his sisters. They're both crying. He feels helpless. Moments like that have stuck with dude over the years. So many traumatic things seen through the eyes of a child, but now trying to be unpacked by a grown man. And he talks about him in the book, but when you watch and read interviews, he doesn't seem like he really likes to elaborate too deeply on that stuff. And of course, you can understand why.
Well, the thing is, man, I'm gonna go back. You know, I ain't gonna get too deep into it.
Michael stayed with several foster families at different times growing up, but he spent a large chunk of his childhood in a legendary housing project, ironically called Hurt Village, a North Memphis project that's so damn infamous there's a stage play dedicated to it. The play was written by Memphis-born playwright Tuohy Hall. And as for Michael Oher, this man's whole life then got turned into art. Even his apartment complex is tragically legendary. Imagine living a life so crazy that we gotta read about it, watch a movie about it, watch a play about it, I'm making this video about it. It seemed like everything and everyone there was hurt, broken, depressed, beaten down. Even the air smelled greasy and dirty. Dude said he witnessed some horrible things there, including seeing a baby get caught in the crossfires of a turf war. People who grow up like this oftentimes have PTSD and the world just try to tell them that they're crazy. The fact that he makes it through this whole ordeal is a miracle. And this is way before he actually got adopted into the rich family. He's still out here on his own. When he was 10, he was sent to the adolescent unit of St. Joseph Hospital. There they treated Michael for anger issues that he may or may not have had. Basically, when Michael's mom was home and the social workers would show up, they go sit in the house to observe everything. Most of the kids is bouncing off the wall, running around, screaming, making noise, being kids. But Michael was more reserved, laid back, just kind of watching everybody else, So because he was extremely quiet, they assumed it was pinned up rage that he needed help working through. But due to his appearance, big dude, African American, they actually zeroed in on the wrong emotion. I wasn't mad, I was sad. I was a heartbroken little kid who was hurt and confused about everything that was going on around me. He knew his life wasn't supposed to look the way it looked. He knew the way he was coming up wasn't normal. He knew it wasn't fair. He knew he didn't do anything to be put into this position. He was just born into it. And he also knew there was absolutely nothing he could do about it. So, you telling me you wouldn't be depressed in that situation? Hurt Village stayed true to his name because the only thing Michael saw around him was pain. As he got older, he saw all the girls having babies, all the boys was getting into gangs and either selling drugs or getting hooked on. Most people in those situations feel hopeless. They feel hopeless to achieve anything outside of that bubble. So the best they could do is beat a drug dealer. That's like the best. But Michael had something different inside him. And to his great credit, he made the conscious decision that he wasn't going to be beaten into submission and just become a part of this destructive cycle. Being the big kid he was, there were street opportunities available to Mike. But dude had the foresight to turn down the quick money and instead play the long game. Around the age of 15, he moved in with a coach/auto mechanic named Tony Henderson. Tony also lived in Hurt Village, but happened to have a spare room in his house. This was a big deal for a big kid. This man was 300 plus pounds already back then. So sleeping in a little 1-2 bedroom apartment with 13 other people, that wasn't ideal. At times in Mike's life, it was even worse than that. His family would frequently get evicted, and at one point, all them damn kids would crowd up into a car, basically stacked on top of each other, and Big Mike, 300 pounds, they would have to sleep, essentially live in the damn car. So when he moved in with Tony, it was a big deal, but it would end up being a bigger deal than he ever would have imagined. So it just so happened when Tony's mom passed, she made Tony promise that he would get his son, her grandson, into this one particular private school. So when Tony took his son to apply, he took Michael along with him. Now Tony's son had impressive grades, but Mike did not. But he was trying to get him to take both kind of as a package deal. Michael's grades at the time wasn't good enough to get him in, and it was hard to get a read on him because he barely talked in the interviews. Unlike in the movie, Michael initially doesn't get in, but after completing some homeschool coursework, he was later admitted. But one of the Briar Quest coaches had an eye for talent. His name? Hugh Freeze. Yes, I'm talking about the same Hugh Freeze that would go on to coach at Ole Miss and is currently coaching at Liberty. Now y'all know how the football coach always walking through the school scouting. See a kid that's late for class, like pretty damn fast, man. Maybe play some receiver. So he see Michael big ass going into the principal office, 300 plus pounds, I don't know, 6'2", 6'3" at the time. He's thinking, I need that dude to come play some ball. So now he's interested and becomes heavily involved in the process of trying to get Michael into the school. And it takes a few months, but he finally gets in. Now in the movie, dude is living on the street at this point and really not doing anything with himself at all. He's not playing sports, hasn't really played any sports. until the Tuohy family comes into the picture. But in real life, he was off the streets at this point. Like I said, at times he would be staying with Mr. Henderson, and other times he'd be just crashing with friends, and in the times in between that, he would be placed with different foster families. Dude wasn't just wasting away twiddling his thumbs. He was already playing organized sports, including basketball, track and field, and of course, football. Now around 2003, when Michael was a junior, according to everything I'm reading, that's when he initially met the Tuohy family. Now in the movie, it's Sean Tuohy who notices Michael first. That's actually consistent with what happened in real life. Only difference is when Sean noticed Michael, he approached and befriended him. In the movie, he notices him but then walks off. And then later on, his kid is the one who makes first contact with Michael. This doesn't seem like something that need to be nitpicked and pointed out, but there is a reason I brought it up. We'll get to it in a minute. Not long after that, Sean Tuohy came through for him. He set him up with a lunch account at the school so Big Man could get all the food he needed. And that's when Michael really started to develop a relationship with their family, but he wouldn't move in till later. The same year he met the Tuohys, Michael was named Division II AA High School Player of the Year. So at that point, he was gonna play at least in college, as long as he could get his grades up. Now, the following year, 2004, the Tuohys invited dude to Thanksgiving dinner. Now, that's a big man, and we talking Thanksgiving dinner, so probably the equivalent of an all-you-can-eat buffet. And you gotta imagine dude was going in at the dinner table. And it was that night that they invited him to come and stay at their house permanently. An offer he doesn't immediately agree to, but eventually, he moves in. Now, some people have questioned, did the Tuohy family do this out of the kindness of their heart? Or did they see Michael as more of an investment? As much as I hate the fact that I gotta explore these themes, there is some evidence that suggests that this could at least be partially true. And we'll get into that in a minute, but here's what we know for certain. The Tuohy family put Michael in a position where he didn't have to worry about where his next meal was coming from or where he would sleep. They provided dude a short-lived but much needed childhood where every single day wasn't just about survival. They provided some much needed stability and normalcy. And they provided those things for Michael slowly. Everything started to change. When I started to see that I had 2 or 3 pairs of shoes to wear to school and I had multiple pairs of pants, my mental health started getting stronger. I could finally focus on school and my grades started to go up. I was eating, so I could focus on other things other than just being hungry. That's when I really started to excel. I started to create that path because I didn't have the small things to worry about, and it all came from help. It all came from help from other people and other resources, and without that, I wouldn't be here. Just like in that quote, dude has made it clear that he's extremely grateful for everything the Tuohy family did for him. He's also stated that he knows how dope it is to have a movie based on your life. But for Michael, when he looks at the movie, he just doesn't see his life.
Can I leave now?
One of the issues with the movie is that it doesn't depict the story of Mike's early life, which for him is by far the hardest and most traumatic to live through. I absolutely don't believe this was done maliciously. A movie got to start and end at some point in the story. But by cutting out or, rushing through the beginning part, you really lose Michael's resolve and his will to get out of that situation. You lose the fact that he made a conscious choice to not fall victim to the neighborhood well before the Tuohys came into the picture. You lose the fact that he had the will and the character to keep pushing and keep fighting to get out of a situation that absolutely had to feel hopeless. And once you take that away from his character, you get what you got in the movie. Just kind of this huge, talented, quiet dude who's wandering around haplessly and then essentially gets rescued, saved, taught how to play football, taught how to do everything. And so you essentially flatten and just dumb down his character. The Tuohys are the heroes of Michael Oher's story. And like I said, they very clearly provided a tremendous help to him, and he's very clearly extremely grateful for that. But he seemed to feel like he didn't get any credit for the way he endured up to that point and all the work that he had to put in. Now, there's also this scene in the movie where Sandra Bullock runs out onto the practice field and coaches dude up by explaining to him the most basic function of his job as a left tackle. And see, the thing about this scene is that it's a really great scene. It works great in the movie, and Sandra Bullock ends up winning Best Actress for this movie, and a lot of it has to do with this scene and other scenes like it. But the problem with the scene is that not only did it not happen, not only was it added in, like that's fine, you're gonna add in things, but this scene once again minimizes Michael, and it minimizes the fact that he wanted to play football since he was young. He's been studying and paying attention to playing ball since he was a kid. He was already well on his way to becoming player of the year before he even met the Tuohys. So when she's got to go out on the field and explain to him that it's a left tackle's job to protect the quarterback, it once again positions him as just this hapless, you know what I'm saying, dude who just happened to be in this big body, and it kind of positions her as the hero. So dude was understandably very annoyed by that. I read the quote earlier on in the video. He was saying, no, that's not me. Like, what is this, you know? So anyway, while he was annoyed by that, dude had an even bigger issue with the movie. His biggest issue seemed to be the fact that he felt he was portrayed as having a lack of intelligence, which he felt was completely misunderstood and misrepresented. I feel like it portrayed me as dumb, instead of as a kid who never had consistent academic instruction and ended up thriving once he got it. Quentin Aaron did a great job acting a part, but I couldn't figure out why the director chose to show me as someone who had to be taught the game of football. Whether it was SJ moving around ketchup bottles or Leanne explaining to me what blocking is all about. I feel what he's saying. He make a good point. Dude got held back in the 1st and 2nd grade, and he struggled in school throughout most of his life. But by the time he went to college, he was able to make the chancellor's list, which means he had at least a 3.8 GPA at that time while majoring in criminal justice. That says to me that he never lacked intelligence. He just wasn't educated properly. And when you going to school, when you're the kid with the raggedy clothes and you hungry and you got crazy stuff going on at home, like think about how hard it is for you, adult person. Like when you got crazy events going on in your life, it's hard to really focus on something else. So he's going through major development moments in his life, but he's doing so while his basic needs not even being met. His whole point is he did not have a chance earlier on in his life, and once he got the chance, he showed you that he had the intelligence. He just needed the basic things that every kid needs before he was able to actually be able to learn and apply himself in school. I think back on the time I was in elementary school, man, and I see it so different now, but it was certain kids who they would have like the beat down shoes, and you know, their pants and stuff wouldn't fit, and a lot of times I would end up having to tutor those kids and like help them with their reading and stuff like that. Something that I actually never had a problem doing, but I used to feel bad for them because I was like, damn, they really can't understand this, and I don't think it's that hard. But who the hell knows what they was dealing with back at the crib? Like, you know, they wasn't put in a position to be able to succeed and be able to come to school and focus on some damn schoolwork because they got chaos at the crib. All right, so remember earlier in the video when I said, now some people have questioned, did the Tuohy family do this out of the kindness of their heart? Or did they see Michael as more of an investment? As much as I hate the fact that I gotta explore these themes, there is some evidence that suggests that this could at least be partially true, and we'll get into that in a minute. Well, this is that part of the video. So the Tuohy family was well off, and because they met at Ole Miss and now had money, even after so many years, they still had a really strong relationship with Ole Miss. I've seen some articles that have referred to them as boosters. You know, the big money alumni who feed resources back into the school. Some people believe that Michael is an example of one of those resources, which is an extremely pessimistic way to look at this whole story, but you know, it's possible. There's a pessimistic version of this story where when Sean Tuohy sees Michael and approaches him for the first time, that maybe instead of a kid in need, he actually sees an opportunity. And the super pessimistic among us might even say that that could be the reason the movie actually changes the way Michael meets the family initially. In the movie, like I said earlier, it's the son who initially befriends Michael, but in real life, it was the dad, it was Sean Tuohy. If you want to believe the more negative side of the story, there is some evidence there to support that argument as well. I'm gonna choose to stay on the optimistic side because I like to live there if I can. And there's also a few other reasons that make me believe that it was bigger than that, it was more than that, it was about helping the kid. I just want to believe that, that's the truth. That's what I want to believe. I'm just going to choose to believe it. That's what I'm going with. Now, here we go, man. 2 videos in a row where the racial dynamics are unavoidable. And the movie does cover the fact that, you know, it was weird seeing this rich white family just adopt this 350-pound black kid. Race played a huge role in the conversation around the movie, and rewatching it as an adult, yeah bro, I can see why. But in Michael's actual story from his perspective, I gotta imagine the whole race thing's probably not that big of a deal. Dude got help from Tony Henderson, who was black. Dude got help from the Tuohy family, who was white. So if anything, he realized that regardless of race, everybody got the capacity to help somebody else. The Tuohy family has been villainized in some of these articles. I don't know what their motivations was, but I do know they opened their home to dude, they helped him out, they hired a tutor to help him with his schoolwork, which helped him get his grades up, which helped him get admitted into college, which in turn helped him get to the NFL. Like, it just keeps building. So even though I don't like how the movie just give them all the credit for every single thing that happened, let's not go too far with it, because they do deserve some credit. You gotta remember that Michael had lived in multiple foster homes throughout his childhood. And dude said this was the first time a family seemed to want him around. And he didn't feel like a stranger. He felt like family. He had a great relationship with the kids. Like, they really took him in, and it really became a family for him. And this is according to his words, so I did just want to make sure I stressed that. But when it came time to go to college, there was some controversy because, again, some have accused the Tuohys of being Ole Miss boosters. Where does Michael go to college? Ole Miss. The NCAA actually launched an investigation behind this, but ultimately decided that neither Michael or the school had committed a violation. But that wasn't the only controversy surrounding Michael's college choice. And I ain't gonna lie, it does seem like a lot of people around him was repositioning themselves and really making moves that seemed to be pretty closely connected to what Michael was doing. So Hugh Freeze, remember, the Briarcrest coach who desperately wanted Michael to come to his school, he actually got hired as Ole Miss's coach only 20 days after Michael Oher signed his letter of intent. There's a whole lot of speculation I could do around that, but I'll just leave it like this. Coincidence? Probably not. Once he actually made it into college, Michael Oher raised his status every single year at Ole Miss. After starting in year 1, dude became a freshman All-American. Year 2, second team All-SEC. Year 3, first team All-SEC. And year 4, first team All-American. During Mike's sophomore season, the book on his life was published. This brought some extra attention, but not too much. It was still manageable. So when Mike was approached about having a movie done, he was in, of course. But it seems like in Mike's mind, he viewed his ascension as more of a heroic feat. But the movie would end up portraying him as more of a sympathetic figure, while the Tuohy family received all the hero treatment. As a creative who tells stories for a living, obviously not on that level, but sitting back looking at the situation, I can see how that could happen. I could see how the movie could end up coming out the way that it did. I also feel where Mike is coming from as far as his issues with the film. And you might be asking yourself, why didn't he say anything while they was developing the script and making the movie? Why didn't he speak up? Couple reasons. One, it's a big Hollywood production. I'm pretty damn sure Mike was on a strict need-to-know basis. It's not like they was checking with him every step of the way. Once they get the green light, they got the story now, the director's taking over. That's why I always say, when it comes to telling these stories, nobody could tell the story like the person that lived it. Because whether this director or some author, or whether it's me telling the story, I'm just taking in information from somebody else and I process it a certain way. I see it a certain way. And then it filters through my perspective, and now it's coming to you. Based on your own experiences and your own life and your own personality, you see different things in a story and choose to highlight different things. By the end of it, even though you telling the same story, people might get a completely different thing out of it depending on how you presented it, you know? And as the person telling the story, you gotta be careful with that, because that can get you in trouble. Now, maybe you wondering why Mike didn't spend a little bit of time with the director and maybe help him to better understand Mike's personality and better flesh out his character in the movie. But you gotta remember exactly what Mike was doing when all of this was taking place. Remember, the book dropped during Mike's sophomore year in college, and shortly after that, a script for the movie gets greenlit, meaning that when Mike signed over his rights, dude was still in college. And this is well before the recent NIL boom. So once again, the NCAA has found a way to share some blame in messing up this damn movie. Because of the amateurism rules and everything that was in place at the time, Mike couldn't even have any involvement with the creation of the film until he got out of college. And he was originally planning to leave college after his junior year, but he decides to go back for that final year. So by the time Mike leaves college, the movie is done. And not only that, but the rollout was now planned around his draft date. Mike was drafted in the first round of the 2009 NFL Draft, 23rd overall by the Baltimore Ravens. Dude got drafted in April of that year, and the movie dropped only a few months later in November of that year. So by the time Mike got to a point where he could have had any real influence on the movie, the first trailer was already out. The marketing campaign had already begun. The movie's done. Now, the fact that they planned to roll out around this draft, that's not Hollywood doing anything inherently grimy. Of course, if it's possible, I'm gonna plan to roll out around the time where he's gonna be getting a high amount of attention. What's a better time to do it than when he's getting drafted? Now, while I don't believe they did anything inherently bad or anything to intentionally hurt Mike, the added pressure and attention would end up becoming a burden for dude down the road. On draft night, Michael Oher successfully completed the hardest RPG game ever made. Took him 23 years to complete that thing, but the DLC ended up being just as difficult as the original game. So the movie is called The Blind Side, referring to the left tackle position. But in the NFL, Michael Oher was more of a swing tackle. He actually started out playing a right tackle spot and would swing back and forth between right and left tackle depending on what the team needed. He spent time at both spots during his rookie season, ruining somebody's perfect marketing plan since he usually wasn't on the blind side. And both Joe Flacco and Troy Smith was right-handed, so yeah, it doesn't work. But here's something that's interesting about dude's career. When I said he was a swing tackle, the dude changed primary positions almost every season. His rookie year, majority snaps at right tackle. His second year, all of his snaps at left tackle. His third year, all of his snaps at right tackle. Then it swings back to left tackle and then back to right tackle again. Some offensive linemen are a completely different player if you put them on the opposite side. So dude's versatility with being able to play either position, pretty damn impressive and something I didn't know coming in. According to Pro Football Focus, Michael Oher was pretty damn good in his first year. Dude was a hellified run blocker and a pretty good pass blocker. His overall blocking grade as a rookie is a 78.3. Compare that to the best offensive tackles through 4 weeks of the 2022 NFL season, and look where he sits, only slightly below Trent Williams and Laramie Tunsil. And that would actually rank him above guys like Teron Armstead, DJ Humphries, Penei Sewell, and Jack Conklin. This is important because dude's been called a bust by some people, but dude was drafted 23rd overall, not top 5, a late first round pick. So if he a solid starter for his full rookie contract, I don't think you can call him a bust at all. And he was even a starter on the 2013 Ravens Super Bowl team. It's gotta be pretty wild to grow up the way he did, then sign for millions of dollars and have everything change. Young Michael Oher had to feel like nobody in the world could see him. But now he was on one of the biggest stages in the world, playing football like he'd always wanted to in front of millions and millions of people. Dude probably did so much reflecting after that game, I'd have been stuck just going through my life, just replaying it, you know what I'm saying? But his time with the Ravens wasn't all good. So if you remember when I was going through his college accolades, dude took a step forward every single year. But during his time with the Ravens, every single year, he actually seemed to get a little bit worse. Maybe it was injury setting in on dude, I don't know, but this is really weird to see. He went from top 10 range to top 20 range for a couple years, then fell all the way down to top 30 range by year 4 and 5. Now he's still a solid starting level player at top 30s, keeping in mind that there's 64 starting tackles in the league, 2 on every team. So despite the odd decline, even at his worst, dude was still ranked in the top half of the league. But to see a player so young declining every year, you can understand why the Ravens didn't bring him back for a second contract. But other teams liked what they saw in Michael and figured he might thrive in their systems. So in 2014, the Titans signed dude to a $20 million contract. Unfortunately though, a toe injury, which is way more brutal than you probably think if you never had one, especially for a 300+ pounder. But the toe injury caused dude to be placed on injured reserve, and then in 2015, the Titans cut Michael due to the injury. Only 1 year into that 4-year contract. At this point, Mike's career was on the ropes. He had to be successful in his next stop, or it could have been the end of his NFL career, especially as a starter. So he bet on somebody he saw tear through his alma mater a year after he left, a young Cam Newton. Michael signed with the Panthers and was part of history once again. With Mike protecting Cam's blind side, now firmly supplanted in the left tackle spot, Cam ended up having the season of his life and ended up being named NFL MVP. As for Mike, he had the best pass blocking season of his career by far. His 82.8 pass blocking grade would rank him 3rd best in the league right now. He was really doing his thing in Carolina and seemed to have found a home. He once again made it to the Super Bowl, the 2nd of his career, but unfortunately didn't get the win this time, in large part because the same way offenses adjusted and started putting a biggest, baddest dude at left tackle, defenses now readjusted and started putting dudes like Von Miller on the other side. The following year, Mike signed a 3-year extension, once again for $20 million. But just like the last time he signed for $20 million, my man gets hurt 1 year into the contract. Damn, I got good news and I got bad news. Good news is that last contract he signed had $9.5 million guaranteed. Bad news is the injury he sustained would end up being the one that would essentially end his career. After only 3 games in 2016, Mike suffered a concussion. He was an offensive lineman, so it's safe to assume this wasn't his first one, but this ended up being the most severe. It took him 2 whole years to get back to the point where he can think clearly. After having a pretty damn clean track record for years, following the concussion in 2016, Michael would get arrested for allegedly assaulting an Uber driver.
4:37 today, a former Ravens player is in court accused of assaulting an Uber driver. The driver told police that he picked up Michael Oher and 4 friends to go to a restaurant in Nashville last month. He says they got into an argument after Oher suggested that he didn't know where he was going. The arguing continued, and the driver says he put his hands towards Oher's face, and then Oher pushed him to the ground. The driver also says Oher kicked him in the leg.
This brings us to our lesson of the day. Lesson number 1. Never put your hands in the face of a 300-pound man. Unless you're that man's coach, I would advise against that. Michael might have even been in the wrong. I'm just saying, pick your battles. Ideally, if you're Michael, you keep your cool and keep it moving. But we all know that once lines are crossed and space is invaded, that ideal resolution might go out of the window. This was during the 2-year period where Mike says he struggled to recover from the concussion, so also you gotta factor that in as well. Not sure if Mike and them paid dude to go away or if the guy just backed off, but either way, charges were eventually dropped. At 34 years old, Michael was released by the Panthers. It sounds like he essentially couldn't get out of concussion protocol, so they released him from his contract and he hasn't played ball since. The same year he was released, dude posted this image on Instagram, along with the caption, "All for the brain, SMH." He deleted it shortly after, but this is the internet, so of course the screenshot exists. Mike struggled for a couple years trying to shake back, but a recovery process that kept him in a lot of isolation kind of forced some soul searching, and Mike began to unpack some of the dark things from his childhood. Here's a few quotes from Mike kind of talking about the whole situation. "It took me about 2 years to get healthy, to think again and make things happen again because I had a concussion and it took me a while to recover. The mind is the most powerful thing, and it has to be healthy to be successful. I bottled so much stuff up throughout my life, I think it really hurt me in the long run. Now I'm writing a book about overcoming and dealing with adversity because I know a lot of people don't believe they have that it inside of them. It took me a while to get back. I had to find that deep down inside. So what I want to do is tell different bits and pieces of how I fought back and letting people know that you do have it inside of you. The easiest part is giving up, but the finish line might be right there. It's great that Mike has been working to keep his mind sharp and healthy and going to therapy to address his traumas from his childhood. And it's even doper that he's using his platform to help others who may be in similar situations get over that hump. But the way said platform was achieved, the movie and the book, may have actually added their own bits of trauma that Michael also needs to work through. He's going on record saying that he believes that the movie caused people to unfairly judge and completely reduce his playing career. People look at me and they take things away from me because of the movie. They don't really see the skills and the kind of player I am. That's why I get downgraded so much, because of something off the field. This stuff, calling me a bust, people saying if I could play or not, that has nothing to do with football. It's something else off the field. That's why I don't like that movie. It's taken away from my football. That's why people criticize me. That's why people look at me every single play. I'm tired of the movie. I'm here to play football. Offensive linemen don't even get looked at. Nobody's paying attention to the offensive line. But me, I'm getting watched for everything. Most individual linemen don't get that treatment. Basically, it comes to a point where you was the 300-pound, big, tall kid changing schools, always the new kid, always standing out. Or even with your family, it's nothing to y'all, but you can still feel it when you go out in public. No matter what you do, you still stand out. At some point, maybe dude just wanted to blend in. His situation has changed so drastically, but that one constant remains, and now it's affecting him in a completely different way, but it still is affecting him. Happily ever after doesn't really exist. At least not the way it was presented to us through fairy tales, movies, and television. Struggles always persist. They just take different shapes and forms depending on where you at in your life. And when you work so damn hard and truly give everything you got to making it out of a hopeless situation, you've usually convinced yourself that the grass on the other side of this fence got a completely different level of color saturation. It takes a few years to realize, man, this bright ass grass is actually kind of giving me a headache. Every one of Michael's relationships seems complicated. His relationship with his biological mom was severely damaged. And she said in an interview 2 years ago that even though she's saying that she's clean now, the two still don't really speak. Again, that was a few years ago, could have changed by now. He also has a complicated relationship with the family that adopted him, because as much as they did for him, he still wants credit for what he was able to do for himself. And lastly, he's got a complicated relationship with the movie that made him famous. He's happy that so many people were inspired by the story. He just wishes he could look at the movie and feel like he's watching his own story. If you like this video, you'll definitely like the one I did on Booby Miles from Friday Night Lights. In that one, we go a little bit deeper into the differences between the movie and the book. It's definitely a video you should check out. There are some parallels in the stories, but because Booby doesn't actually make it into the league, the video on Booby offers a look at the other side of a otherwise similar story.